Hi everyone and welcome to the new video. If you are at least a bit interested in astronomy, you probably heard about smart telescopes. They are small, compact, not heavy and actually not very expensive. But is it really smart and is it really a telescope? I have a Seestar smart telescope for about 6 months and now I will tell you my honest review and my impressions about this. This video is not sponsored and I bought it on my own. I will show you how the telescope works and I will explain if you should buy it or not. As an example of my review I will use Seestar, but I think these ideas are applicable for other smart telescopes as well. Let's get started. If you never used a telescope before, I will briefly explain which parts the classical telescope contains. To show you the telescope I can just open Amazon and search for telescope. As you can see the choice is big. Usually every telescope has a mount, which can be alt-azimuthal or equatorial. It used to point the telescope to the sky object and to compensate the Earth rotation. Then there is the telescope itself, which obviously collects the light. It can be reflector or refractor, so it can have a lens or a mirror. Then we have an eyepiece, and if we watch into it we can see the objects, for example the moon. It is important to know that the telescope itself has no magnification or zoom. It only has a parameter called focal length. For example, it can be 1000 millimeters. And the actual magnification is the ratio between focal length of the telescope to the focal length of the eyepiece. Practically it means that you can have several eyepieces and you can vary the zoom. For example, you can see the moon as the whole object, or you can insert the eyepiece with a shorter focal length and you can see the craters in more details. This is actually a cool feature which allows you to change magnification. And last but not least, we have a viewfinder, which is important for the initial setup, and later we will see why. Instead of the eyepiece, you can connect a camera, so you can make photos or videos. Usually it is photos because the objects are dark and you need a long exposure. And this is practically how the normal telescope works. Modern telescopes also have a so-called GoTo system, which allows to automatically find objects in the sky. And this is the era where smart telescope evolved. And let's now see how the smart telescope works. This is a Seestar telescope I have. First I will turn it on and I will show how we can observe the sun. As a reminder, this video is not sponsored. I bought the telescope on my own. And now let's see how it works. As we can see, it is much smaller, and practically if I would describe it in one sentence, it would be something like a smartphone camera on steroids. Practically it's just a smartphone matrix with a telelens, and it also has two motors that allows telescope to move in both directions. It can store the images on its own memory. You can connect it via the USB cable and download them. And of course there is a smartphone app where you can control all the features. You may wonder what kind of limitations does it have compared to a normal telescope, and actually there are a lot of them. Let's turn the telescope on and see how it works. I am filming this part of the video in the daytime, so the easiest object to spot is the sun. Now I'm selecting the sun in the app. We can see a warning that we must install a solar filter. For normal telescopes, you can buy a special film called Astro. Usually it is cheap, and you can make a filter on your own, but here the filter is already included, which is nice. And as we can see, the telescope is moving and it is trying to find the sun. The telescope gets its position from the smartphone app, and it also has the internal compass, so it knows the direction. In theory, it is enough to calculate the sun's position, but alas, this compass is not very accurate. And as we can see, there is also a metal balcony frame, which can affect the compass results. And as a result, it was close, but the sun is missing. As we can see, the app suggests me to point the sun manually or to recalibrate the compass. There is a joystick control in the app, but we can clearly see the first limitation of this telescope. It doesn't have any viewfinder. On a normal telescope, it can be a simple tool like a red dot. So you can easily spot the object and it usually takes less than a minute. But here we have nothing, there is no way to attach any external viewfinder and the telescope is actually small. In the case of sun, the easiest way was to minimize the shadow. And finally I can put the sun in the center and I can see it. And now you can see the second limitation of this telescope. You cannot actually watch into it. This telescope has no eyepiece and there is no way to attach it, so practically you can see the sun on your smartphone screen. Obviously you can record photos or videos in the app. You can also download raw footage from the telescope as well. But personally I have different telescopes myself, from the Skywatcher refractor to the 8-inch Celestron, and I can tell that observing the object with the naked eye can be much more pleasant experience than just staring to the smartphone app. The resolution and the dynamic range of the eye is probably still better. But as we can see, in general the telescope works. We can see the sun, we can see the sunspots on the surface. In general the lens is not so big, so the zoom is kind of limited. You can probably get a higher resolution from the bigger telescope, but considering its small size, it's okay. And now let's go forward. I will wait until the evening and I will show how to observe the planets. Okay, at the evening the sky was clear and I decided to watch the planets. It was also a good time. Two planets were visible nearby, Venus and Jupiter, and it was fun to see them both. I am making this video in the beginning of June, so it is still not dark, even at 10 o'clock in the evening. But the sky was clear and both planets were good visible, so I decided that it will be easy to do it. I put the telescope on my balcony, selected the Venus first and pressed GoTo. And to my surprise, the only thing I saw was this. And after 1-2 minutes of thinking, the app showed the message that it cannot find the object. I was staring at the app as an idiot. I am sitting under the clear sky and the planet is brightly visible and the smart telescope cannot find it. I mean, the app knows its location, it knows the real time, it knows the orientation from the compass. It has a camera and the computational power more than a computer that was flying to the moon. What can be wrong? The second problem is the error message is absolutely not informative. And let's be honest, the message "please try again" gives no hint about how to solve the problem. My first idea was that the compass is not accurate and I recalibrated it 3 times, but it did not help. Then I started digging into the Cloud Nights forum and to Google search. And it turned out that the Seestar telescope is using the mathematical method, so-called plate solving, to find the telescope position using the reference stars. Practically, to enable the GoTo functionality, the telescope needs the starry night. Which is great, but I live in the Western Europe and now it is the beginning of June and even at 10 o'clock in the evening there are no stars. Last but not least, the telescope has no viewfinder and there is no second wide-angle camera. The view angle of this lens is actually small, it's about 1 degree, and the telescope is small itself, so watching through this telescope can be an interesting yoga exercise. But finally I did it, let's see what we can get. And the first image is the planet Venus. And let's be honest, the result is really not impressive. In general it is okay, we can see that this is a planet. But obviously the planet's size is not so big and we cannot expect to see any small details on it. Which is practically not surprising. The lens diameter of this telescope is about 50 millimeters, and there was an old rule known for years, like maximum zoom is about 1-2 diameters of the lens. So practically we shouldn't expect more than 100 zoom from this telescope. Again, considering its small size and weight, it is okay, just don't expect too much. And this is the second planet, Jupiter. You can actually see that the Jupiter has satellites, but obviously they are not very good visible. Also, as we can see, the default image is overexposed. The planet is just too bright and we cannot see any details on it. If I reduce the brightness, the quality will be better. And by the way, keep in mind that on this telescope you can change the optical zoom. On a normal telescope, you can use an eyepiece with another focal length and you will get different magnification. Here everything is fixed and you cannot change it. There is a zoom in the app, but it is just a digital zoom. So with this Seestar telescope you can technically see the planets, but just don't expect too much details. It's not a planetary instrument. As a simple example, I can show how the same planet looks in the normal telescope, and as you can see it is a huge difference. This is the same place and the same balcony, and as you can see the difference is big. So in the case of the lens or a mirror, the size matters. The diameter of this lens is just too small to provide enough zoom. If manufacturers do the telescope with 6 or 8 inches mirrors, It's not just for fun, there is a reason for that. Alas, you cannot achieve really high zoom in the pocket format. So technically you still can watch the planets, but just don't expect too much. And now let's switch to the objects where this telescope really shines. Let's watch the deep sky. I'm making this video in summer, so I had to wait until 2 o'clock AM, otherwise it's not dark enough. As a first go-to object, I selected the brightest star, so it is easy for the telescope to make the initial alignment. As I mentioned before, the telescope is using astrometric solving to find its position, and it was not working for the planet, but now when it's dark it works. And here I can see two deep sky objects, M81 and M82. Let's watch them. As we can see, the telescope is starting to move. The process takes a bit of time. Obviously I cannot show the telescope itself, because outside it is dark. Honestly, I don't know if it is a good thing or bad thing. Instead of watching the dark sky directly, you just stare to the phone screen. And finally we can see the M81 object. And here we can see the major difference between this one and the classical telescope. So what can we see on this screen? Interestingly, we don't see the image in real time. When you select an object with the GoTo, the telescope automatically starts image taking. This drastically increases the signal to noise ratio, and as we can see in the beginning the object is barely visible, but the more we wait the better the quality. And obviously a lot of math going on behind, like compensating the Earth rotation, stars alignment and so on. I created a separate video where I took raw images from this telescope and created a Python algorithm to do this. Feel free to watch it if you're interested in details. What is important for us, the image is actually frozen. If you want to move a frame a bit, the stacking will start from scratch. Obviously if the image frame is changed, the stacking of the old frames will not work anymore. And you can also press the preview button and see the original image. And as we can see, it is much more dim. This telescope aperture is not so large and it collects not so much light. And obviously the more you wait, the better the result. You can attach the camera to a normal telescope and do the same. This smart telescope is just doing this inside. I can use digital zoom and enlarge the part of the photo. But if I change the frame, the stacking will start again from scratch. So practically what you see on the screen is not a sky in real time, it's just a photo. It's not so clean and crisp and bright as you see it in the real telescope. It's just a photo that you scroll on your phone. You can clearly see the noise on the picture. It's not good or bad, it's just a different experience. Again, I can switch to real-time preview, and as we can see, all the magic is gone. This telescope itself cannot show the image so bright without stacking. And obviously the stacked image looks better. I can even run the AI denoising algorithm, and as we can see it makes the image cleaner, but the processing takes time. Now I will show what will happen if I change the frame. As you can see, the telescope is starting the alignment again. The previous stacked image will be automatically saved in the gallery, but the real-time stacking data is lost and the telescope will start from scratch. From the UI perspective, the app works well. We can see the sky map, we can select different objects. So it works well, except the fact that we're just staring on the phone screen again. It's not a real feeling of using a real telescope. By the way, the telescope works fully autonomously. You can select the object, turn off the phone and go to sleep, and it will continue shooting. Then you can come back later and see the stacked image. And as we can see, when I changed the frame, the stacking restarted and we see a barely visible image again. Now I was waiting for about 6 minutes, and as we can see the image is much better. The signal to noise ratio improved and we can see much more details. As we can see, the app works. And now let's make a short summary. Finally, let's answer the main question. Is smart telescope really a telescope, and does it make sense to buy it? As we can see, the answer is not so simple, and obviously it's my personal opinion and others may not agree with me, but in my opinion it's not a telescope. Practically it's a portable deep sky camera that can occasionally make some planetary photos, or you can watch the stars in the app, but practically it is not a telescope, you watch only photos. At least for moon and planets you can see the real-time image, but for the stars and deep sky it's mostly staking. So is it make sense to buy it? I think if you are interested in astrophotography, it's a great tool for beginners. It allows you to easily get the results, and you can also connect your telescope via the USB cable like normal smartphone, and you can get access to raw images, and you can test different software with it. You can stack images not only in the telescope itself, but you can do it manually with raw files. I even did it with Python and it works well. So if you want to focus only on astrophotography processing, it's a fun tool for beginners. But on the other side, the smart telescope is absolutely not upgradable. You cannot change anything, it's a solid object. You cannot change the matrix, you cannot change the magnification, you cannot add the viewfinder and so on. The only thing you can do, you can optionally use an equatorial mount, and it will allow you to increase the exposure time, but practically that is it. You cannot do anything else. Also keep in mind that this lens is just too small for the planetary photography, or even for moon and sun. Don't expect too much from it. And last but not least, it is not a telescope, you cannot watch into it. And finally you end up staring to the phone screen again. If you want a real tool for astronomy, especially for kids, I think the real telescope is much more interesting and much more fun. Also keep in mind that smart telescopes is practically new technology and there are some limitations. For example, on my balcony the compass does not work, and the telescope was never able to locate the sun or the moon, which is disappointing. Also for the GoTo navigation, this telescope requires visible stars, and as I mentioned before, during summertime it practically doesn't work because it's not dark. If you want to see the planet in the evening, the telescope will not be able to find it. Even the cheap $10 viewfinder can solve this problem, but this telescope doesn't have it. I'm sure these problems will be fixed in the future versions, but for now this is what we have. And as a final answer to the question if it makes sense to buy it, I can tell my own personal opinion. Smart telescope did not inspire me. It's a great piece of engineering and it does a lot of things automatically. But with using a smart telescope, I feel absolutely no connection with the night sky. It's just tearing the phone up again. Also dealing with hardware upgrades, changing some parts, learning the stuff, it's also a big part of the hobby, right? With a smart telescope you practically don't have this anymore. If the only thing you do is staring the screen, you just don't need a telescope. You can download the Stellarium app and you can have all planets and deep sky objects in real time. Personally, smart telescope just didn't inspire me, though it's a fun tool if you want to test Python or image processing or something like this. This video is already long, so I will make a short one-sentence summary. Smart telescopes are good in deep sky photography. They are also portable and they are also good for beginners. These are the main advantages. However, at least for my Seestar model, there are issues with navigation for sun and the moon caused by the compass. There are also navigation issues with planets because the stars are required. Practically it's really annoying. You want to see the planets in the evening and the telescope doesn't work and there is no viewfinder to pinpoint it. Last but not least, the telescope is not upgradable and for many objects like planets, the magnification is just not good enough. So it was a summary and I hope it will help you to make the decision. So whether it makes sense to buy a smart telescope or not, it is still an open question. Personally, I was not inspired and I will probably sell it. But it's my own decision and yours may be different. What are your thoughts about it? Write in the comments below, I will be curious to see it. And that is it for this video, thanks for watching, I hope you learned something new. Press like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. You are also welcome to visit my Patreon page. This support helps me to buy things like this telescope for testing. Thanks for watching and see you next time.